Alright, let's get into this. Dwarf Fortress Histories of Cupidity and Metal. It's been a hot minute since I played this game. And by hot minute, I mean over a year. Yeah, it's been over a year since I played Dwarf Fortress. I was going to start a fortress, and then I kind of got into other hobbies like painting Warhammer and other games, and I started a world, really great map, a lot of diversity, really cool, and I decided to move on from that without even really doing anything with that world. Just move on. Because I have a better understanding of the advanced world generation, so I was actually able to craft a world a bit more. Not sure if it's necessarily better, but it's kind of at the point where I put in some time over the past couple days on learning it, and I got to feel really good results and had to narrow it down to really minor details ultimately. But I think I've got a good world. So I'm looking forward to starting a fortress, starting multiple fortresses, going on adventures. I'm playing the beta version of Dwarf Fortress, so I am a little bit ahead of the curve for their official releases, but that also means more bugs. Hopefully nothing file breaking will occur. The adventure mode does release a couple weeks from now, but I want it now, even though I don't plan on using it immediately. There's also just a lot of additional things that have been added to the game, like children and baby portraits, which I like all the small details and being able to experience them, months in advance. Huge for me. The adventure mode's been out for almost a year, almost, in beta, and now it's finally entering official release, so that's pretty cool. But I have a new world, and my plan is to play it all year. Initially I was like, well, I'm gonna start 111, maybe I'll end on 1111, which could still be what happens, but it's my plan to use this world for all of 2025. So if I'm ending in 1111, that means December I'm just playing other games, which it's entirely possible, just because of just how December tends to be. It's a pretty busy month for everyone, for the most part. Even someone like me who's typically not that busy. But the plan is to use this world at least for a year, possibly longer. I want to get a few good fortresses going, maybe a few adventures, different characters, different experiences. Because from my experience with Dwarf Fortress, for the most part, is I get pretty well set up, both financially and military and defense-wise, that I don't experience as much fun as some other people. So my plan is to come into this world fresh-faced and new, set up a fortress, build it, make it strong, move on, do another fortress, but each subsequent fortress, maybe put myself in a more dangerous or challenging scenario within the world, and then adventures as well, which I have no idea what that's like, honestly. So that'll be really interesting. But even just the fact that I haven't played Dwarf Fortress in over a year, I don't remember any of the keyboard shortcuts. I know there's going to be a lot of minor mistakes that I make in the beginning, small things that I am going to forget and just not do. And I know they'll bite me in the ass. But that's just the way it is. I'm going to skip the tutorial simply because the tutorial really holds your hand, and it forces you into a civilization, and it forces an embark point on you, and I want to choose my civilization and I want to choose my embark point because I've admittedly already scouted the map out and found one that I am pretty happy with. So that's the plan, because kind of my my goal for this first fortress, apart from having a village, a marketplace, all the things that you would have in a fortress, the big standout I want for this is to have a monastery at the top of a mountain. That's kind of the fantasy I'm envisioning. A dwarven monastery with a massive library at the top of a mountain. And at the bottom of that little mountain range will be a village that's mostly going to be underground. Possibly entirely underground. We'll see. It depends on what animals I take, as well as what produce I bring, which is why when I do embark, I'm going to do a custom loadout, set up my 7 dwarves, and set up the stuff that I embark with. One of my plans for this fortress is to embark with a little extra wood, purely for the sake of avoiding doing a lot of wood cutting early on. I don't want to have one of my 7 dwarves die on me, especially since I'm going to be tailoring their skills a little bit. And I've had it in the past where I put a lot of time into setting up my dwarves. I embark, and in the first 15 minutes, my woodcutter is dead. And I remember the first time I did it was a real kick in the dick, because I gave my woodcutter the best woodcutting skill I could. So that way I get fast wood and ideally be safe. Died on his 3rd tree. It's almost as memorable for me as in my first fortress ever was when one of my original 7 dwarves became the sheriff and went on a warpath. And I've had some really violent sheriffs and hammerers, but this guy, it was so bad. I've memorized his name, Kivish Likotad. Like, this sheriff was so brutal that one of the first things he did when I made him sheriff was he went into a sleeping dwarf's room, and while she was asleep, he beat the brakes off of her. Smashed her face into the wall. Her teeth were literally splattered across the room. It was ridiculous. I hadn't even faced real combat at that point in the game, so this was my first real taste of violence. And honestly, his time as the sheriff was it traumatized a lot of people. So I'm very careful when it comes to implementing law enforcement in this game. So a lot of things I'm gonna have to look out for, and a lot of things I'm absolutely going to overlook. But that's just kind of the way of DF. So we're going to start a new game in the existing world, and we're going to be in Oram, Kodor, the world of dawn. It's the first of granite in the early spring of the second year. Now with every world in Dwarf Fortress that isn't in active use, you're presented the option of Fortress, Adventurer, or Legends. And when I first played this game, Adventurer was grayed out. I guess it's already gray, so dark grayed to the gray. It was dark grayed out. And I wanted it. Even though I knew I wasn't going to play it immediately, I wanted it, or at least I wanted a release date. 2 years later, we're almost there. And that's really exciting. But before we get into Fortress mode, before we get into Adventure mode, we need to break down the legends of Oram Kodor. So let's explore the history of the world of Dawn. So there are 2,819 historical figures, 593 sites, 16 codices, scrolls, and etc., 214 regions, 867 underground regions, 224 civilizations and other entities, 57 structures, and 1 chronicle by age. So, I guess we'll look at the simplest and longest, and that is chronicles by age. Now, with this being the second year, obviously, we're in the age of myth. The age of myth was a time when living gods and mighty beasts still held sway. So, there's going to be a lot of repetition in year one. Because in year one is when most civilizations are founded. And there's a lot of civilizations to go through. So we'll just try and go through it fairly quick. The dwarf Toon Kindled Sack became the queen of the Wires of Continent. The elf Dissa Zephyr Beauty became the druid of the Dominant Tuft. The snow monster, Tharma, the evil puzzle, thrust a spire of slate up from the underworld, naming it the Sinful Citadel, and established a gateway between worlds in Whisper Hex. The snow monster, Tharama, the evil puzzle, became the master of the Defended Devil. The beige brute, the Grave of Obscurity, also thrust a spire of slate up from the underworld, and became the master of the Wraith of Slaughters. The elf Amala Gloss Canyons became the druid of the Droplet of Cruxes. The dwarf Regoth Cold Carnage became the queen of the Glove of Phrases. The dwarf Erdem Spray Axes became the king of the Polished Sack. The Polished Sack. Oh my god. The elf Maim Washgales became the druid of the Helmed Talon. The lizard monster Zikoth, the Mold of Sins, became the master of the Severe Terrors. The skinless demon Ugith, the Mold of Filth, became the master of the Terrors of Hair. So he's got no skin, but he must have hair, which is very unsettling. The dwarf Zephon Riddle Lantern became the king of the Wise Avalanche. The elf Amala, wooden owned, became the druid of the godly flower. The tortoise fiend Rakust the gnarled became the master of the unthinkable dread. The dwarf Shorast Calm Page became the king of the treasury of roses. The silvers of justifying of the treasury of roses founded pink trumpets. It's quite a name. The elf Ave Glove Twig became the druid of the belted petals. The eyeless fiend Daddy became the master of the intense flies. The elf Namal North Lyric became the druid of the ape of elbows. The dwarf Muscat Handle Sandaled became the queen of the key of bastions. The elf Vera Thunder Cherishes became the druid of the Tenebris Sheens. The dwarf Domas Shootgross became the king of the celebrated belted labors. That's a mouthful. The battle channel of meshes of the celebrated belted labors founded gilded gloves. What a mouthful that is. We're not even halfway there. The charcoal monster Onul the Singed Phantom thrust a spire slate up from the underworld and became the masters of the plague of lightning. The dwarf Tobul Shaft Mountain became the queen of the elder sabers. The elf Tippy Paperpack became the druid of the silk bridges. The gecko monster O became the master of the scourge of epidemics. That's not good. The elf Pilly Duskage became the druid of the branded ferns. The beaver fiend Nona became the master of the poison of cyclones. Interesting. The dwarf Deduk Vinewhip became the king of the soaked doors. The elf Tosses Grove Orange became the druid of the growth of balance. Ooh, the Gila monster devil Stathra became the master of the seducer of papers. Interesting name. The dwarf Vutok Lulknife became the king of the hames of boring. I think that's in reference to boring into the earth, not boring as in there's nothing going on. But I could be wrong. The dwarf Etur Lance Lancers, awesome name, became the king of the walls of evening. The koala demon, the Hungry, became the master of the pale hell. That's fucking dope, because koalas are known to be pretty fucking demonic when they don't get food. So calling it the Hungry, that's some Metal Gear Solid 3 type shit right there. And the pale hell? That sounds cool. That sounds metal as fuck. I love that. And the terrors of hatred of the pale hell found in nature maligns? Ugh. That just sounds metal. Through and through. Even the koala part. The elf Iyathi Sideglade became the druid of the shore of wandering. The gray demon Kostru Ruin Maligned, the mean dungeon, became the master of the jade thief. Wow. The elf Thilu Luckgulfs became the druid of the musical waves. The dwarf Melbil Shovebrass became the queen of the boulder of excavating. The dwarf Nomal Punch Ridge became the king of the vigorous spear. So we have the polished sack and the vigorous spear. That's a dick joke right there. With the Tower of Crowds. Oh my god. The elf Betha Ape Sleeps became the druid of the branded fragrances. The sloth monster Damstow Stench Larva became the master of the ruthless sin. The elf Uwo Sungdangle became the druid of the twinkling skins. That's some Twilight shit there. The sheep brute Eslo Lake Jumps became the master of the cross demon. The elf Ty's sister control became the druid of the sculpted crab. The hedgehog demon Strawn became the master of the devil of banks. The mongoose brute Budam the future bud became the master of the curse of sliding. But he's apparently going to be a future bud, so nice. The elf Omo Bodice Blazes became the druid of the birth of banners. The elf Kosei Trammeled Rock became the druid of the mischievous Shin. The snow monster Thorama the evil puzzle created Safe Thunder. Oh, we've already heard of the snow monster Thorama the evil puzzle. She's just creating new places now. Oh, but you see these purple bits of text. These are the artifacts, the slabs. There's Phantom Help, which was created by Thorama the evil puzzle. The Noble Tower, created by the Beige Brute, the Grave of Obscurity. Helmsdied, the Directions of Domination, created by the lizard monster Zikoth, the Mold of Sins. Buzzard Frothed, created by the skinless demon Ugith, the Mold of Filth. Oiled Starve, created by the tortoise fiend Rakus the Gnarled. Goad Warning, the evil tragedies, created by the eyeless fiend Daddy. The Shock of Bolting was created by the charcoal monster Onul the Singed Phantom. It's Singed Phantom. Why am I saying Singed Phantom? The Lamented Deceiver, created by the gecko monster O. It'd be like me saying it was the Lamented Deceiver. It's Lamented Deceiver. Lance Yelled the Remarkable Fortress, created by the beaver fiend Nona. You know, a beaver fiend creating some sort of fortress makes sense. Sung Styles was created by the Gila monster Devil Stathra. Trifle Spasm was created by the koala demon The Hungry. The God-Forsaken Pitch was created by the gray demon Kostru Ruin Malign, the Mean Dungeon. Pusmer Chance was created by the sloth monster Damsto Stench Larva. Orange Tuft, the Twinkling Action, was created by the sheep brute Eslo Lake Jumps. The Lost Owl was created by the hedgehog demon Strawn. And the Citadel of Soap was created by the mongoose brute Budan the Future Bud. And all of these slabs are the spires that were thrust up and that create those bridges between worlds. What those worlds are, I don't know. Is it what's deep underground in the surface, or is it some other deeper, darker, danker hell that we can't normally perceive but does exist in this Dwarf Fortress world of Oram Kodor? Could be. Only time will tell. And we're over halfway through the history, which that's really exciting for me. I thought it was going to take a lot longer to get through this. So all of this is just different civilizations founding different locations. At this point in time, most of these names don't mean anything to me. The Fellowship of Uncles. That's interesting though. Yeah, it's all just word burger. Stuff I don't even need. And look, even more so, even more stuff that really doesn't have a whole lot of weight on the history of things. The early spring of 1, a bunch of monsters created different positions. That's literally all that's gone down in the first year. In the first year, we had a lot of places that were founded, and a lot of demons came into reality. And those demons founded their own cults. And then everywhere expanded a little bit. And then at the end of the year, different positions were doled out as they were needed. But the only other bit of lore we have is In 2, the elf Anina Genius Buds became the druid of the godly flower, which suggests that that was the last civilization to pop up in the year of 2. And I don't believe that any more will randomly pop up. I think everyone has hit their starting point in the Age of Myth. And that took a fraction of the time I thought it would be to talk about the Age of Myth. I know it's only the first year, but as it turns out, when there's more civilizations, people actually tend to keep to themselves a bit more. I thought it would be a result of a lot more wars going on in the first year, but I think when you're having to look in a few different directions at once, it's like maybe I keep to myself. Maybe I don't. So, if we go to the codices and scrolls, it is literally all just the slades that were, thrown up, like the Noble Tower. The Noble Tower is a legendary native platinum slab. This is a native platinum slab. All craftsmanship is of the highest quality. The slabs reads, I am Pyfe, once of the underworld. By Nadak, I bind myself to this place. In 1, the Noble Tower was created by the Beige Brute, the Grave of Obscurity. In 1, Nadak aided the Beige Brute, the Grave of Obscurity, in becoming a permanent part of the living world that war might rage forever. The ritual took place in Help Canyons, using the Noble Tower. The Noble Tower was stored in Help Canyons by the Beige Brute, the Grave of Obscurity. These are all real tongue twisters of names. The Beige Brute, the Grave of Obscurity. Grave of Obscurity is a tongue twister. I can't say that 5 times really fast. I tried. I failed. We got the Noble Tower. Great name. Lamented Deceiver's a pretty good name. A godforsaken pitch. Oh, I gotta look at the Citadel of Soap. The Citadel of Soap was a legendary earthenware slab that reads, I am Nifi Thrananel Essem. Nifi Dawn Cleans the Fresh, once of the underworld. By the chestnut domicile, I bind myself to this place. The chestnut domicile aided the mongoose brute Budam the future bud in becoming a permanent part of the living world after pondering the ineffable subtleties of death. The ritual took place in Help using the Citadel of Soap. I'm gonna have to read this a little bit more, because that brings up a couple questions I have. I also want to look at the Shock of Bolting, because it reminds me of an artifact from a previous game, and I loved the name of that, the Burn of Blazing. So now we have the Shock of Bolting. The Shock of Bolting was a legendary native aluminum slab. This is a native aluminum slab. All craftsmanship is of the highest quality. The slab reads, I am Lish Lursad, Lish the hateful mist, once of the underworld. By Nadak, I bind myself to this place. The Shock of Bolting was created by the charcoal monster Onul the Singed Phantom. Nadak aided the charcoal monster Onul the Singed Phantom in becoming a permanent part of the living world. The great fortresses might be razed and tested in the siege. The ritual took place in Goal Search using the Shock of Bolting. In 1, the Shock of Bolting was stored in Goal Search by the charcoal monster Onul the Singed Phantom. I'm going to call him Singed Phantom again at some other point. God damn it. So, Nifi Thrananil Essem, also known as Nifi Dawn Cleans the Fresh. So Mr. Clean, in essence. But what the fuck is the Chestnut Domicile? That is the weirdest name for a deity I have ever heard. Ginji Crodnul, the Chestnut Domicile, Dwarven Goddess. The chestnut domicile was a deity that occurs in the myths of the Walls of Evening. The chestnut domicile was most often depicted as a female dwarf and was associated with family, pregnancy, marriage, births, rebirth, death, war, and fortresses. In one, the chestnut domicile aided the mongoose brute Budam, the future bud, in becoming a permanent part of the living world after pondering the ineffable subtleties of death. Okay. Interesting. Osmond, human goddess. Not as not as relevant to us. I'm mostly looking for a dwarven goddess. Gorlak. What the fuck's a Gorlak? Edom the Hale was a deity that occurs in the midst of the vigorous spear. Edom was most often depicted as a male Gorlak. It was associated with the sky, the weather, nature, the sun, and fire. I've never heard of a Gorlak. Okay, human. Doesn't matter. Godforsaken pitch. Deskir, malice flooded the dark. Dwarven goddess. Deskir, malice flooded the dark, was a deity that occurs in the midst of the soaked doors. Deskir was most often depicted as a female dwarf and was associated with misery and torture. Ah, she worked with the koala demon, the Hungry. Yeah, Deskir again. Inu Prophet Focus. That's a human. The Dock. The Dock was a deity that occurs in the myths of the Polished Sack. The Dock was most often depicted as a rotting male dwarf and was associated with death, chaos, war, and fortresses. What the fuck, Nadak? Nadak aided the snow monster Thorama, the evil puzzle, the beige brute, the grave of obscurity, the lizard monster Zakoth, the mold of sins, the charcoal monster Onul, the singed phantom, and the beaver fiend Nona in becoming permanent parts of the living world. For Thorama, it was to sow the seeds of chaos therein. For the grave of obscurity, it was that war might rage forever. Zakoth, the mold of sins, was brought in so that more might die. Onul, the singed phantom, was brought in so great fortresses might be raised and tested. And Nona was also brought in to sow chaos. He's got like 5 horsemen of his own apocalypse. God damn Nadak, I don't trust Nadak. Who's Smo? Human. Nadak. Nagarak is a deity that occurs in the midst of the Wise Avalanche, was most often depicted as a male dwarf, was associated with torture and misery. He brought Daddy into this world. Rockspane's the Bejeweled. That's a dwarven goddess, alright. Urtal Rockspane's the Bejeweled was a deity that occurs in the midst of the Boulder of Excavating. Urtal is most often depicted as a skeletal female dwarf and was associated with deformity, disease, death, blight, jewels, and wealth. And she also brought the skinless demon Ugeth, the mold of filth, and the Turtus fiend Rakus the gnarled into the world. Why? It's more Urtel. And Doc, I think the Doc's actually responsible for the rest. Yeah, I don't trust a Doc. So I'm not going to bother looking at regions or sites or underground regions. There's way too much. I'm not even going to look at structures because most of it it's not even. You have the underworld spires. You've got markets and taverns. That's it. That's it. We could look at historical figures, but honestly, what does any of this mean? What does any of these? No, I don't know any of these people. I don't know who they are. I don't know what their names mean to me. They're nobody. They're fucking nobody. And typically, I would look into conflicts that happen in the Chronicles by Age, in the Age of Myth, but there haven't been any yet. So the best we can do is look at civilizations and other entities, and kind of just like see which ones kind of pull at us. The Cinnamon Nation, okay. The Nation of Murders? See, we got some cool names going on. Some things I just can't pronounce because they're not even in English. There's no translation. Really what I'm looking for right now is the main civilizations, which I could find those, honestly, if I went through the Hot Sacks, if I just went through the Chronicles by Age. But I'm going at a good pace through this. Oh, there's the Pale Hell. It's Goblin civilization. Okay. The Gloved Nut. Wow. And Suggin. Suggin the Gloved Nut. Suggin the Gloved Nut. Yup. Alright, I've actually forgotten the name of the place I was looking for. The Blunt Pass? An elven group. Wow. Of course, they're out in the forest just smoking up. The Treasury of Roses. That's what it is. The Treasury of Roses. I saw the Rosy Coalition, and I was like, ugh. Yes. The Fellowship of Uncles. A human group, of course, of course. The Absolute Basin. The Fatal League. Ooh. The Wicked Sins. That's a good one. Shit Lawless. That's great. That's great. Okay, so yeah, I didn't find the one I was looking for. So we're gonna go to Chronicles by Age again. Go to the Age of Myth, and let us see. I was looking for the Treasury of Roses. Let's look at Shorast. Shorast Compage was a dwarf. He was one of the only dwarves of his kind. In one, Shorast became the king of the Treasury of Roses. Related historical figures include Zadot the Soaked, object of faithful worship. And he's associated with the Treasury of Roses, the Silvers of Justifying, and he's the king of the Treasury of Roses. So, let's look at the Treasury of Roses. The Treasury of Roses was a dwarven civilization of the World of Dawn. The dwarf Locum Relic Skunks became the general of the Treasury of Roses. The dwarf Azon Walkringed became the outpost liaison of the Treasury of Roses. The dwarf Aethel Blazed Arrows became the diplomat of the Treasury of Roses. The dwarf Shorast Compage became the king of the Treasury of Roses. In one, the Silvers of Justifying of the Treasury of Roses founded Pink Trumpets. The Arrow of Earth of the Treasury of Roses founded Inch Chips. In the early autumn of one, the Treasury of Roses held a performance of the Lutes of Rhythm in Pink Trumpets as part of the celebration of glazing. In the early autumn of one, the Treasury of Roses held a ceremony in Pink Trumpets as part of the celebration of glazing. The event featured a telling of the story of the ascension of the dwarf Shorast Compage to the position of the king of the Treasury of Roses in one, a recital of the musical Mauve poetry, a performance of the Lutes of Rhythm, acrobats, costumes, and candles were also there. They were glazing the fuck out of their king that day. And they weren't even bullshitting. Like, this is the celebration of glazing. We're going to glaze the fuck out of you. We're going to talk you up. We're going to tell everyone you're the best. We're going to tell you you're the best. And at the end of the day, we're going to tell ourselves we're the best, telling other people they were the best. And I fucking love that. In the early autumn of one, the Treasury of Roses held a procession in Pink Trumpets as part of the celebration of glazing. The event featured acrobats, banners, and images. So, when Shorast became king, he came out dressed to kill, looking like $1,000,000, walking through the streets, Macho Man Randy Savage, King of the Ring type moment, pomp and circumstance playing. It'd be an epic moment. Wish I was there. Would have been great to see. But I'm still in the void. I'm still a void dwarf. In two, the dwarf Sugan Delships became a baron of the Treasury of Roses. Nice. Baron of what? Treasury of Roses, I know. Pink Trumpets. From year 2 to present. Zuthon Istbar. I like that name. So. Actually, let's look at the other historical names. Okay. He's got Kikros as well, right? Yeah. Okay, so it seems we've got 3 gods in our realm. Currently, they haven't brought any demons into reality, and hopefully they don't. But there's a good likelihood that they will. But let's read what kind of deities these are. Yeah, we'll go with the single one. Zadot the Soaked. Zadot the Soaked was a deity that occurs in the myths of the Treasury of Roses. Zadot was most often depicted as a female dwarf and was associated with water. Well, that's pretty basic. I was expecting a little bit more out of Zadot. You know, all the other gods I've read about so far are like encompassed all these different aspects. And then we get water. Is what it is. Yeah, it doesn't list the gods, does it? No. Alright, so I guess we'll look at Kikrost Gear Chambers. Kikrost Gear Chambers was the deity that occurs in the myths of the Treasury of Roses. Kikrost was most often depicted as a male dwarf and was associated with creation, crafts, and labor. Again, from the sounds of it, another goodly god. So let's look at Solon God System, the Greatest Eagles. Solon God System, the Greatest Eagles was the deity that occurs in the myths of the Treasury of Roses. Solon was most often depicted as a male dwarf and associated with discipline. Again, like those are three good deities. And that sounds like a classic trinity, like two male and a female. You know, that's like some DC, Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman type setup. And they're all good. I love that. I'm feeling pretty confident that I'm gonna rep Zuthon Istbar, the Treasury of Roses. I am not repping the Polished Sack. No chance am I being the Polished Sack. I won't be the Polished Sack, and what was the other one? The Vigorous Spear? Something along those lines. All I know is I don't need that. I don't need it. I just can't believe the Polished Sack's even a thing. Yes, the Polished Sack and the Vigorous Spear. And those are two names I won't be caught dead using. But I was honestly hoping for a little bit more in the Age of Myth. You know, maybe a couple tales of you know, some dragons, some hydras, some giants, something. Because this world is filled with big, mean things. And normally by this point, you know, when I look in the Age of Myth in year 2, there's been a couple of them that have, you know, stirred the pot, caused a ruckus, and yeah, that's not the case this time. Which is, I won't say it's a shame. But, I was kind of hoping to scope out, you know, some mega beasts. But yeah, apparently I'm gonna have to wait until I guess Fortress number 2, or if I go on an adventure after my fortress. I'm gonna have to wait until that moment. Because I got no lore with regards to any of the dragons, the hydras, the bronze colossuses, whatever other things are in this game. Of course, I didn't call unimportant historical figures, so literally every minor historical figure is here. We do have a couple deaths. Oh. Struck down by a Minotaur. Wow. There's no way they're the only 2 deaths. Oh, no, there's a 3rd death. The zombie dragon? Ongong Ivory Glowed the Branded Luxury? They got a zombie dragon animated by Unknown Forces? That is wild. How the fuck do you kill a zombie dragon? I'm assuming a lot of fire. Oh, I really hope before I face something like that. Oh, there's a 4th death. Cyclops flash time the rainy coal. Flash time. Okay, so we've had 4 deaths, 5 deaths. The Hill Titan. Smegma Birthskin. Alright. 5 deaths. First year. I don't think that's that bad. That's not that bad. That's not that bad. It's not that bad. It's really not that bad. What is bad is a zombie dragon. The Negative Umbra. The Negative Umbra was a cave. In one, the zombie dragon Ongong Ivory Glowed the Branded Luxury settled in the Negative Umbra. In the early spring of one, an avocado wood crown stolen from Nuts Vised by the zombie dragon Ongong Ivory Glowed the Branded Luxury during the rampage of the zombie dragon Ongong Ivory Glowed the Branded Luxury in Nuts Vised and brought to the Negative Umbra. Interesting. Well, those are the legends. Now that we're done the legends, it's time for the fortress. The Dwarf Fortress. But I'm going to do that in another stream. So I'm going to end this stream and start a new stream. Yeah.